Am I the butthole for getting someone fired when they made a mistake? I was at a grocery store, shopping for supplies some weeks ago, 5 to 6. My card included some alcohol, so I gave my driver's license as age proof. Now for context, I speak with an accent from my home country. English isn't even my first language actually. The cashier and I small talked before the carding about the accent, and I mentioned I'm from another country. So when I handed my ID her, she was surprised that it's got a US state on it. And she said it was a fake. I said no it's not, and she claimed that since I'm from another country, why would I have a US driver's license? I thought she was just slightly confused, so said, I'm not a citizen but I've lived in the US long enough, and that's why I have the license. Also, I mentioned that my driver's license has a different state on it that where this interaction happened because I even lived there a few years. And she's still suspicious, and said it's not a real license, and she can't sell me the alcohol or anything else in the cart. I said that I could just buy my basics, and leave the alcohol, and needs to confiscate the license. I was annoyed at this point, and said listen it's not a fake, if you want I can show you a picture of my passport to check my name and DOB and know this isn't a fake ID. Then will you give me back my ID, let me buy my stuff, and let me get the hell out of a public store during the pandemic? At this point, she loses her temper and says, wow you're really full of stories and excuses huh? This isn't my first day on the job, I know a fake when I see one, you aren't getting this back and grabbed a pair of scissors and cut the card up. At this point I'm furious, my card wasn't a fake, and I was happy to prove it, but now I'm stuck without a convenient ID document, need to go to the place, if it's even open, and sit in a crowd during a pandemic to get a new one, and I need to start carrying my passport with my everywhere until it's issued so I have an ID on me. So I demanded the manager, created a big deal out of her behavior. I didn't yell, but I was absolutely furious and made it clear how much of a problem, in terms of time, safety and money, she has created for me, and stormed off, and received a gift card for my trouble. I didn't see her the next few times I went in, but saw someone new. Some polite questioning revealed that she was fired even though it was her first offense, because they wasn't pleased that instead of escalating to the manager, the cashier cut up some customer's ID willy-nilly. The new guy didn't know I was the customer. And now I'm torn. She was trying to just do her job, and I didn't expect her to be fired. And during a pandemic where everyone is struggling, no less. Of course, I feel like I was justified in making a big stink, but I'm sure an entitled person feels the same when they make a big stink about a store not honoring an expired coupon. So tell me folks, am I the butthole? No, you're not. She didn't just made an honest mistake here. Getting confused about the fact that you can have an American license without being American is pretty stupid, but sure, she didn't know. However, cutting it before properly checking if she was right? Hell no, you don't do that. At the very least, she should have let you buy the other stuff and go check with her manager/co-workers about her confusion. But no, she was so certain that immigrants can't have American license. You're illegal. And that I don't have to check up on it, I'm the American here and I can't possibly be wrong. She deserved to get fired. Don't feel guilty about this, at all. Edit, forgot the vote since it didn't even feel needed. Not the butthole. I'm not too familiar with US law system but couldn't original poster press charges? Property destruction or something similar? I think I heard another story where employee chopped up valid ID, cops were called, and the employee got into trouble for destroying official document or something along those lines. If somebody chopped up my ID, I'd probably be freaking out really hard. Yeah, I remember that story. The guy was trying to get beer before his university class at a convenience store and the store employee took the card, called it fake, and the manager told her to confiscate it and she cut it up and threatened to call the police. So he walked out and called the police, then re-entered the store to wait. When the police came they listened to both sides, checked the cut up ID and asked him to confirm who cut it. He said the manager told her to take it and she cut it. They both were arrested for destruction of government ID, or property. And I think there was another charge too. They were both let go with the order to appear for court, and once the handcuffs came off the cashier made a run for it. The guy proceeded to buy his beer, went to class late, and told his professor what happened and got a pass on being late due to the situation. That's the one. It amazes me how someone would just go ahead and cut up an ID like that, like WTF, just confiscate it and co-firm with the police or something, geez. I want to say they used the threat of calling the police to try and humiliate him to force him to back off, but I could be wrong. I have a TBI, so I can get confused sometimes. Neutral face, but I do remember the main plot because something similar happened to my dad when he was a young adult. He was trying to get some beer for my aunt, she's older than my dad, for her friend's party. Cashier at the store thought my dad had a fake ID. They took it and called the cops on him. My dad just sat in his car waiting. When the cops arrived, the cashier got reamed by the police for theft of official documents, but my dad didn't press charges. He just wanted his license back so he could get the beer and drive. So, I worked in a liquor store for 6 years in college. Our policy was to seize the ID if we thought it was fake/not theirs, throw it in the lockbox under the register, and immediately call the manager, and they were to immediately call the police. Only exception is if we felt we were at risk of violence, etc. by doing so. Absolutely under zero circumstances would you ever destroy it, though. Am I the only one who feels like that's putting a real undue burden on the store? Stores shouldn't be doing quasi-police work. I really feel like it's going beyond the pale to seize another person's ID and call the police. I mean, refuse service, sure. I just find the whole thing to be a bit over the top. That's not directed at you, of course, for merely working at a place with that policy. I just find the concept of the policy itself distasteful. Yeah, where I live in Virginia, the onus to confiscate is not on stores. The standard procedure here is to simply deny the sale if the ID is suspicious. I've never heard of a need to confiscate it. Honestly, if I'm in a rush to get somewhere, the last thing I'd want is to be held up at a store. If you aren't going to sell me what I want, just give me the ID and I'll go somewhere that will. Nobody wants to wait around for the cops to confirm that their ID is real. Some states allow the confiscation by vendors. Minnesota, where I live, allows you to confiscate any ID you suspect is fake, and you have 24 hours to turn it into law enforcement. Technically, you're destroying evidence if you cut it up before the police confirm its authenticity, even if it is fake. Correct. Some places have laws about not giving back suspected fake IDs and/or currency, so it can be a rock and a hard place for staff in that regard, which sucks. Many of these people make it or near minimum wage. It's crap to offload that burden of enforcement onto them. Plus, if you're wrong and you sell alcohol to a minor by accident, some states will charge the employee with a $10,000 fine to and a potential loss of liquor license for the establishment. When I was serving, we had to be really careful, because they send in random people to check, and the only way you know you've effed up is if they hand you a red card. Sometimes they send people in with fakes from out of state and expect you to somehow know that they were forged. The store clerk is definitely the butthole though, and either extremely dumb or racist or both. There was literally no reason for her to cut up the license, and if she truly thought it was a fake, she should have told her manager or called the police before deciding to hack the card up. I had a beer store do this to me, except they were refusing to call the police. They were just going to keep my ID. I was a few years over 21 at the time. The manager was pissed off when I called the cops to report that my driver's license had been stolen by the store. Did the manager just give your ID back, or did you have to wait for police? Had to wait for the cops, who were really not impressed with the whole thing. They were pissy with everyone there, including me, but at least at that point, I got my ID back. Yeah, that's exactly what I would have done if I were in your position. I wouldn't be surprised if they got hit with a police sting recently. That usually sends liquor store staff into overdrive. Crap is predatory as F. There's another one too. Person goes to a small town grocery/alcohol shop, visiting relatives in hometown. They live out of state, they show their ID. Cashier wants a closer look, so they hand it to them. Cashier instantly cuts it up. OP, WTF? Why did you do that? Cash, it was clearly a fake. No one lives in Washington, D.C. Op, are you kidding me? Of course they do. And I have a passport from there too. Shows it but doesn't hand it over. Gets a manager. Manager agrees with cashier. Original poster is pissed. Manager threatens cops. Original poster calls cops. Cops come out and rip into the staff. I've had TSA agents that don't understand a DC license is from America. They wanted me to have a passport. But it says you're from Colombia? Absolute morons. LOL, come on man, I know people live in DC and I don't even live in America. Some dumb mofos be working at the TSA. I've seen similar stories about people who live in New Mexico. Where's your passport if you're from Mexico? It's New Mexico, not Mexico. New Mexico, Old Mexico, it's still Mexico and you need a passport. Forehead slap. You just reminded me of a bumper sticker I saw a few years ago that made me stop and laughing out loud. It read, New Mexico, not really new, not really Mexico. I witnessed with my own eyes a DMV employee try to refuse to issue a driver's license to a Puerto Rican woman because she didn't have a passport and green card. She humiliated him and got the license. You don't end up there because you're competent enough to do something useful. Not the butthole. Some things are worth being fired over, even if it's a first strike. Harassing a customer and destroying their government, issued ID in a fit of xenophobic rage is one of those things. Emphasis, xenophobic. Cashier deserved everything they got. They actually deserve a lot more than just being fired. Confiscating the ID is fireable. Cutting it should have gotten her arrested. I agree. But calling the police can have unintended consequences, so I'm okay with original poster not calling them. I mean, original poster left without an ID, which may have been a driver's license, unclear. If so, original poster is now driving without a license, which is super illegal and could get original poster in trouble with the law. The police definitely should have been called. If so, original poster is now driving without a license, which is super illegal. You do know that you are still a licensed driver, even if you physically don't have your license that proves it, right? I mean, technically, you might get in a little trouble for that, but referring to this as super illegal is a bit much. A cop pulling over a non-American guy with an accent and finding out he doesn't have a valid license on him could end very badly, beyond just a fine or ticket. People have lost their right to breathe over less. Replace non-American with non-white, give them a legit license and you've got tomorrow's paper. I don't know about you, but where I am, it is actually illegal to drive without a driver's license. There's a law in the Highway Traffic Act that states you must have your driver's license on you to operate a car. Not all cop cars can pull up your photo and you can get a $500 fine for driving without it. Interesting. In my state, you don't have to have it on you. Obviously, it makes things easier, but you are considered licensed whether you physically have it or not. You can still get a fine for not having it on you. You get a ticket if you drive without your license on hand. Depends on the state how much it is. I know in New Jersey it's pretty expensive. Driving without a license, which is super illegal, might be different depending on your country, but I don't think driving without having your license on you is classed the same as driving without being qualified. The latter can be an imprisonable offense. I don't think leaving the house and forgetting your wallet is as bad. I personally think management could have pressed charges themselves, but I see your point. Not the butthole. This was absurd behavior for a perfectly reasonable explanation. Firing is completely justified. Hopefully the store pays for you to get a new license. There's no store that makes it a policy of cutting up driver's licenses and refusing the sale of all items in a cart instead of just the booze. Before the bar shut down permanently, the one I worked at followed stricter protocols than most. Owner worked at a dispensary, so we followed those rules for alcohol sales. We would have never cut up a card. Just denied admission to the bar side or sales of alcohol. Confiscation was rare, and that's only after asking questions based on info on the card and getting conflicting answers. The person looks way too young for the ID, the picture doesn't fit the face in front of you, asking for additional proof if needed, and it proved skeevy, calling for a manager, me, as a second opinion, turning them away and or calling the cops if they became belligerent. I would have fired an employee instantly for cutting up a card. We did have a policy to confiscate obvious fakes to turn over to the police, but Lord's help you if it came to that. We never had a fake ID. Mostly expired or unreadable temps. Some states have the worst temp IDs, legit just a piece of regular printer paper. Laughing out loud, WTF, a 10-year-old could duplicate this. There are a lot of issues surrounding proof of age for alcohol. Extreme weight loss or gain, surgery, transitioning, makeup, crap, even a shaved face, but an accent was never an issue that needed my employees to call and ask for my okay. I've accepted foreign IDs so long as the birth date and facial ID is there. Scissors are not the answer ever. This is a great comment. Thanks for adding so much context to the situation. What the hell, printer paper IDs as temps? How not secure are your real IDs if that's the standard for a temp? I'm genuinely curious. My ID has like at least 3 watermarks and some other things to prevent fakes and copying. I forget the state, but I had to call the officials on the paper, matched online, to confirm. It was bizarre. When I got my new license 2 years ago, in Ohio, my temp was a piece of paper until my new one came in. It's the new ID laws. Whether it's enhanced or regular, you get a piece of paper and the plastic one is mailed in a few weeks. Yes. Same. I live in Ohio. But they punched your old license with a strange set of holes and you had to have that in combination with the paper. Pennsylvania. If you change your address, they give you a card to pair with your existing photo ID because they're too cheap to reprint the ID with the correct address. Yes. I am Pennsylvania married and moved but had to fly to SLC for work. The stupid paper update caused me to get flagged in airport security on my way back. Apparently, TSA agents in SLC had never heard of it. I had to show them multiple cards, they wanted me to prove the name change, and then go through a full search where they pulled everything out of my luggage. Fun times. NC this. It's literally a piece of printer paper that you fold up to be its size and keep for a few weeks until yours comes in. When I turned 21, that's what they gave me at the DMV, and I had to show both my expired and the temp to get alcohol. If you have a change of address, you can just do all of that online and use your old unexpired until it's mailed to you. If you renew it long enough before it expires, which is always your birthday I'm pretty sure, so like a month before, you can just use the former one until the new one comes, which is what I've done aside from turning 21. Ontario prints out temporaries on paper. It might be fancy, I never checked. But you have to have the expired card with you as well for photo ID. That's so strange to me. In Belgium, when you start the renewal process for your ID card, it's mandatory to hand the old one in. If you don't have it, you have to go report it lost to the police before you can even renew. They're incredibly strict about ensuring there are no old IDs circulating, and I kind of assumed it was the same everywhere. Do the states not have a similar rule? In Australia, at least in my state, that's what we have as well. It's ridiculous, it doesn't even have any photo on it. Scissors are not the answer ever. Except maybe for the beard problem. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.